Today we are interviewing Gary Caffell, whose election slogan is Masterton Matters. Gary is a fourth term councillor who's standing for the Mayoralty position. He's also standing in the general ward. Welcome Gary, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lyn. Thank you.
Look, we believe mayors need to show leadership, courage and vision. So what is your vision for Masterton and how are you going to achieve that?
Lyn, I've got a couple of visions. The first of those visions is built around the potential we have in the town. We're growing really quickly. We're up to 28,000, 30,000 people. We've got great amenities here for the kids, for young families, so we're attracting young families into town. There's retirement homes popping up all over the place, so we're proving an attractive place for the elderly to come. But with that growth, it creates a problem with infrastructure, and there's no question that we've got problems with our infrastructure, and we need, for me, one of the missions I would have is to bring that infrastructure up to a standard where we can meet the growth that we're having, and that's not a simple thing to do because it costs a lot of money.
Yes.
And I just think we need to be working really hard on getting our infrastructure up. I mean, we're getting into situations with our infrastructure and heavy rainfalls where there are places in town where sewage is spilling over their back and front lawns. That's just not good enough.
No.
And so we need to tackle the infrastructure problem, and I would love to see in the next 3 years that we make a real big effort to do that. The other mission I have is to, and it's a really important one for me, is to bring the town, the community and the council closer together. We've got tremendous division in the town at the moment. I mean, I walk uptown and every second person I meet is saying to me, look Gary, you guys aren't listening, we don't trust you, why should we fill in your surveys because you're not going to take any notice of what we say. And that really worries me, and I believe we have to make a really concerted effort to bring the community and the council closer together. And we can do that in a lot of ways, and I'm happy to explain that.
Yes, please. I was going to say, how do you answer those people who say that to you?
We're very lucky for a start in our district in that we have, and this is a pat on the back for you guys, is that we have 3 ratepayers associations. We have you guys, Masterton, we have Castle Point and we have Riversdale. So that's a great starting point. We can meet regularly with you people.
We'd like to, certainly.
Really important that we could meet regularly with you people. I think we leave the business people out of a lot of our discussions, and so we can have regular meetings, I believe, with the business people. We're developing our relationships with iwi, but iwi aren't the only cultural side of things in Masterton. We have a lot of diversity in Masterton with a lot of cultures represented, and I'd love to see the other cultures also being brought into the discussion process. And I mean, when I'm talking like this, people sort of say to you, it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot of talking to people, and that's what I want to do. That's, I believe we need to get right down to the grassroots. As a mayor, I would have an open door policy for people. I am determined to have my office available to people at least once a week to phone in, come in and talk to me. I want to be a hands-on mayor, and I want people to actually be able to, and I don't want this your worship thing. It's got to be just Gary, just me, as I am, and to actually talk me through the problems and issues they see. So it's a lot of talking, Lyn, but I believe it has to be done, and it's not rocket science. I think it can be done.
Not, you're right. So remember that, ratepayers and residents, Gary's door's always open. Just make sure you front up and let him know your problems. Let's talk about the Masterton revamp. How do we attract investors to come into this town? And do you think the $35 million cost of the CBD upgrade, most of it being loan funded, represents good value for money?
I'll take the second pass first. I think the $35 million is sort of like a draft figure, and I believe we can bring that down. I really do. I don't like the idea of spending that much money, to be quite honest. I do think though that the CBD is looking a bit tired, and it does need a bit of a revamp. I do worry a little bit whether just revamping the CBD is going to mean bringing more people into town. I mean, whether the two go hand in hand, I'm not sure, but I do think that we need to do something to brighten the place up. I I'm a really strong believer in that if we have to work really closely with the business community in anything we do in that CBD. And you know, I've had business people say to me over the last couple of years, Gary, we didn't even get asked, and yet, so I think we need to have this really close relationship with the business people if we're going to do anything. I worry for the small business people in town because, you know, we've got a lot of the bigger department stores and whatever coming into town, and it does create pressure on the smaller business. So if a revamp, if doing something in town can increase the patronage for those people, then certainly I'm for it. But look, I've got question marks over it, and you know, I would like to see a really good, thorough discussion on that CBD upgrade before we go ahead with it.
I don't know how it costed the 35 million. I mean, who costed that as part of the revamp? Do you know?
Oh, I think that the 35 million is a figure that. Yeah, it's one of those things when the officers, I guess, or whoever are planning these things, they have to try and put a figure on it. And I think that 35 million was seeing what it would take to do what. The other thing about the CBD upgrade that we can't forget is that whatever happens, it's going to affect parking.
And parking is such an issue for Masterton people, isn't it? We all have to park outside the door.
Oh my God, parking is something that people they just get so uptight about it. It's and so the parking scenario is going to be probably the biggest discussion point of the whole thing, and we're going to have to take the community along with us. I mean, there are some people who are saying, why don't you pedestrianise part of the CBD?
Yes.
But immediately you say that, the people that just say, well, we don't want to walk to the shops, we don't want to walk whatever. So it's a really tricky one, and so I think there's still a fair few questions to be answered on the CBD upgrade, but certainly some sort of upgrade I think is necessary.
Yes, it's certainly looking very tired.
Very tired.
Okay, let's talk about rates, because a lot of this is coming from the rates to pay for a lot of this. So do you know what the median wage is for Masterton people right now?
Oh, you know, people ask me that, and I say it's so difficult because in Masterton we have the very well off. We do have quite a number of them, and we also have the very poor, and it's very difficult to get a median wage. Some people put it around 50,000. I think it's probably nearer 30,000 to be quite honest. It's something that there's a difficult one, but in terms of the rates, Lyn, there's no worse discussion in council for a councillor as rates, because it's almost inevitable that you're going to have an increase, because of inflation, rising costs and whatever. And this year was 6.6%. Now I was one of 3 councillors along with Bex Johnson and Tim Nelson who wanted that rate increase to go out for public consultation through the annual plan. And I'm gutted that it didn't, because when you go out to consultation, you give the community the opportunity to tell you what they think of that 6.8% increase, and you can say to them face to face, okay, you want that rate increase to come down, you tell us the services and you tell us the projects that you want can.
Yeah.
And as councillors, I believe that we paired that rate increase to the bottom line, but if we'd gone out for consultation, who knows what the public would have come up with, and we might have had a whole new look at it. So I'm as mayor, I would be really, really strong on wanting our councillors to go out every year to public consultation. I just think we should. It's the community that are paying the rates. Let's give them the opportunity to at least tell us what, how they think we should be spending that money.
That's certainly a good idea. We'd welcome that discussion with you every year too, Gary. Look, let's talk about the Civic Centre, because a lot of people would think, well, to cut back on your 6.8% on rates, let's get rid of the Civic Centre cost for a start. It's a nice to have when we need issues like infrastructure sorted. But I was just going to ask you the question, what is your current position on the Civic Centre debate? I know you're one of the famous 5 that voted for the existing site. The existing site has been gifted to the council, or to ratepayers effectively, from the Masterton Trust Lands Trust. So what is your current position on it? Has it changed at all since
No,
the debate?
my current position hasn't changed. I believe we need a civic centre, if at all possible. I'm a little bit weary actually of calling it a civic centre. I believe we need an auditorium that we can have concerts and what enough seating 800 people. Have a decent auditorium. Now, whether we need the big flash civic centre is another matter. But I believe we need something there, and I believe the current town hall site is absolutely perfect. I see building something alongside the facade or the municipal buildings, whatever you like to call them, as being really visionary, and it could be something really amazing to me. And Lyn, in terms of cost, you know, I believe that we argued a lot that 30 million was too much, and I still think 30 million is too much. I would like to see, you know, we've got plans before us that are talking around the $20 million mark, and I want to see that explored.
This is the Borman plan you're talking about.
Well, it's the Borman plan, but there are possibilities of others as well. Who knows what will come out when it goes to tender?
Yes, it would have to go to tender. Yeah, to be fair.
And anybody could come up with something really special. So I'd like to see us go out. I'd certainly like to see the costs kept certainly under the $30 million mark. You know, the whole civic centre debate to me has been quite incredible in the sense that we had 5 councillors and a mayor constantly voting to push ahead with the project when there was no location. I mean, Lyn, that's bizarre. I mean, it is really, really bizarre. And I and you know, I name them: Bex Johnson, Tim Nelson, Chris Peterson, and David Holmes, and myself, were constantly against that because it just didn't make sense. No. It just didn't make sense. And here we had a location right in the middle of town, perfectly placed, owned by us.
2 minutes from the CBD.
And there it was, and we weren't using it. Now, we gave them that option. I moved a notice of motion that we actually had that as an option, defeated 6-5. We then asked for a pause to stop the costs expanding further than what they already had, and we didn't get that either. And now we've got this review of the whole civic centre process being undertaken, and I'm not knocking the people that are doing the review. They're very bright people. But why have a review on something which was such a shambles? I mean, why not let the new council just start afresh and take it on afresh? And so that's where I sit on it. I think the election comes at a great time because no matter what people think, it will be a referendum on the civic centre to a point. And there are councillors who were the rebels, if you like. We're all standing, and there are 3 from the other side who are standing, and I hope that people look very carefully at what they're saying now about the civic centre project.
So Gary, and I see the Masterton Theatre Company's got a proposal on the table too. You've seen their presentation?
Yeah, I went to the theatre company presentation. I was just so impressed. It was terrific. But Lyn, the problem there is that they haven't yet come up with a business plan, and they haven't come up with funding, so we don't know how much it's going to cost. We're hearing all sorts of figures which are quite large. So whether the ratepayers, and I don't think we should be asking the ratepayers to pay for both. I mean, it's going to be a big drain on resources. So we're going to have a very sit down and have a really good discussion with the theatre company as a council. And who knows where that will develop. But I'd love to see their idea. I think is brilliant. I really appreciate the work they do in the community. They're an amazing group of people, and I really want to see them come up with something special as well. And it may be we have to combine the two.
Yes, it would be good to work in parallel with them, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And we've got to look at that. And I'm sure that they will come to the discussion table with an open mind, just as we will, and we'll see where that one goes.
It's called consultation.
It's called consultation.
Gary, let's talk about infrastructure. Now, you've touched on it briefly there, but we've got large housing developments happening in Masterton, all approved by the town planner. We have climate change causing more severe weather events, and ratepayers living with portaloos, you know, every time their streets flood. Some for as long as 10 years now, and others say even longer. So we can't really blame that on climate change because it's been going on for a long time. We fully expect significant water restrictions this summer because we have a problem with water storage. And our infrastructure is going to struggle more. So how do you plan on addressing that issue when you come into council?
I think water infrastructure is probably the biggest issue. I mean, I think it's over the top of the civic centre in actual fact in terms of what we've got to do. we do have real problems, Lyn, with our water infrastructure. And as I mentioned previously to you, and you mentioned there, we have these problems every time there's a heavy rainfall, that there are citizens in town whose properties suffer from sewage going on.
And it's like a third world country down,
it's just not
down
good
there.
enough. It's just not good enough. But it's not easily solvable either, and obviously it's going to come at a cost. We as a council have got this better off funding from the Three Waters reforms, and we've suggested a whole lot of avenues which that can go down. I'm now thinking myself that water infrastructure, at least trying to improve that water infrastructure, should take basically the bulk of that money, if not all of that money, because it is so important. We can't hold back for the Three Waters reforms, because who the hell knows where they're going? I mean, there's the thing with the Three Waters reforms, we have one or two councillors who are shouting from the rooftops about opposing them and whatever, but I think we don't even know what the final package is going to be. So I struggle to get into that area of supporting or not supporting, because we don't know what's going to happen. And until we know what's going to happen, how can you say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing? For me as mayor, my really big point would be that I would want to know that those reforms aren't going to jeopardise the services we get here at the moment, and that it's not going to mean that ratepayers have to pay more. Those are the things that I would really be looking at in terms of the water reforms. And as I say, until the government tells us what the hell they're going to do, how can I say whether they're good or they're bad?
And what about the water storage?
The water storage, I think we're quite lucky in terms of the fact that Wairarapa Water, they went a long way down the line on that water storage and how we could enhance our water storage. And then, of course, they had funding problems. And I think we need to re-engage with Wairarapa Water. I really strongly do. I've talked to some people on Wairarapa Water, and they're more than happy to do that. And I think we need to re-engage and look at where they got to, and see if we can get back into getting that water storage whole process going again. We need water storage, there's no question about it. It's huge. And again, it's a lot of money. But we do have that knowledge from Wairarapa Water, and I think we should use it.
So, because we've got the Kaituna Dam, is it, or the storage facility up there. But my understanding is, with the first tranche of the Three Waters money, we can't use Three Waters money on the water storage at Kaituna. It has to go to wellbeing in the community.
Yeah, I think that's a question. That's one of the questions that's still to be answered. Some will say what you're saying is right. Others will argue and say, look, there's a few loopholes in what the government's saying. I think that needs to be investigated. Quite frankly, Lyn, I don't want to say definitely whether that's right or wrong. Okay. But it's something we need to look at.
Okay. Let's talk about amalgamation, because we've got local government reforms are coming as well at us. Where do you stand on the amalgamation of the three Wairarapa councils?
The last time that argument came up, I was in favour of it, and in fact the Masterton Council voted in favour of it, and Masterton and South Wairarapa gave us a real whopping on that. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. I believe that amalgamation is something that is going to happen at some stage, but whether or not it's the time to do it now, it's difficult because of all these other things that are happening. I've been reading a lot about it just recently, and it's funny how you get people who have got a really expert knowledge in these things sort of seem to be 50-50. They say 50%
people are moving a wee bit.
They're saying it's great, and others say, oh, I don't know, you lose your identity and whatever. My position as mayor would be that that we're elected to look after the best interests of the Masterton District Council and the Masterton District. So I would be that would be my first priority in any amalgamation move. I'd have to make sure, I'd have to be satisfied in my own mind that we in Masterton wasn't going to cost us an arm and a leg to take in Masterton and South Wairarapa. And I'm sure that they feel the same way. Because we've all got our own different little things going on in our communities. But overall, I think it's something that is inevitable, but it's just when that inevitability comes about.
I'm sure it will be forced on us.
Yeah, and that's the other point. It may be that the government's going to force us on it. I know when I was one of the councillors who said it actually, that when these Three Waters reforms come out, In fact, I went public and said I believe this is just a forerunner to amalgamation. This is the government are going down that line now. And but since then, the government have backed off a little bit because of all the storm of protest about the Three Waters. So I think they're perhaps having second thoughts on the amalgamation at this stage because they've got an election coming up as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Gary, look, we need to wrap it up there. So thank you for your time today, and we wish you all the very best for your campaign.
Thank you very much, Lyn. If I could just finish off, first of all, thanking you guys for doing what you're doing because I think it's just so important to get the word out. The other thing that I could just, if I'd like to just mention to people is that I am standing for the Mayoralty and for the General Ward, and one or two people have said to me if I can just mention that why are you doing that? And I believe that if you've got the conviction and the commitment to run as mayor, you shouldn't have any less commitment and conviction to be a councillor if you don't get the Mayoralty. So I'm surprised that there are 3 running for the mayor who aren't going for both, because I believe if it's good enough for you to go for one, you should have that courage and conviction to go for the other one as well. So I'm looking for 2 ticks, Lyn. I'd love people to give me 2 ticks. Thank you very much, and thanks for the interview.
That was Gary Caffell on Why Masterton Matters. What did you think? We look forward to your feedback.